Welcome to the settlement. I'm Fen, and in this video we're going to overview and review the latest release on the simulator and in the store. This is the Screaming God expansion. So this is a 2-monster expansion that contains the Screaming God, which is a Quarry Node 4 monster, meaning it is the top apex of the quarry monsters you'll have in your campaign at the moment, and the Parasite Queen, who is a new finale monster, making the third that we've had, the others being the Gold Smoke Knight and the God Hand. So, I'm not going to bury the lead. This is one of the best expansions that's been released in a fairly long time, and I think it is an essential purchase in my opinion, because it's adding to the part of the game that has the largest gaps at the moment. We've only got one other Quarry Node 4 monster, that's the King, that's in the Gambler's chest, and as I said, there's only 2 other finale monsters at the moment, one of them being the Gold Smoke Knight, and the other being the God Hand, which is again in the Gambler's chest. This is cheaper than the Gambler's chest, and I actually think this is a really good progression point for people who've completed their first full playthrough of People of the Lantern and are just looking to expand further. It does have content specific for Ark survivors, but it also has content specific for fighting Ark survivors, so there is an experience to be had here, and I think it's just really good and really valuable. Now let's get into why that is by opening the box and taking a look at the contents. Here we are. This is everything that comes laid out. Well, almost everything. I've kept a few bits and pieces in here. They're basically extra terrain dials. So yeah, it's quite a lot in the box, which is to be expected when you've got 2 monsters. On the left here, this is all stuff related to the Screaming God, as well as here with the board setup. Over here, then you've got our Parasite Queen. Take a look at the model in a short bit, and some cards related to that monster. And down here we've got our vignette, because this comes with most of a vignette. Everything needed to play. It is missing the actual models for vignettes at Survivors. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But yeah, we got the box is stuffed physically. There's really no debate about that. It's absolutely crammed to the brim. So here's our Screaming God model. Let's just hide that for the moment. Really nice model. Sculpted in the same style as the Phoenix, I think. It has that same sort of heavy detailed fur aesthetic. It's a fantastic model. It's not too hard to assemble either, which is nice. The tricky part is this underside, which you just follow the instructions and you'll be fine. Overall, pretty great model. Pretty great model. We've also got here the armor set models. There's 4 of them. They're the new sort of mostly preset ones that have a few options on weaponry. These are the sample weaponry and open heads or closed heads they go with in the simulator right now. Nice models. I've not painted these ones yet. I don't know when I'm going to get around to it. It's just, I've got so many Survivor models. I might paint 2 of them at some point. We'll see. They're great though. They are great. On the Parasite Queen front, you get the Parasite Queen model, who has 2 heads. This is the head I'm not so keen on. This is the one we've nicknamed the Megan head, as in Megan from the Megan horror series. It's really dullish, and I don't like it as much as the original sculpted head. I don't like it as much as the alternative head, which has a veil. I don't know if we can change that on the simulator, but you certainly have the choice in physical. And then there's these 4 illuminated figures. We're going to talk a bit more about them later on as well. But let's just get into the Screaming God. So this is a Quarry Node 4 monster. That's a very empty slot at the moment. We basically only have it or the King. The King was Team Death's first attempt, and they hit a little bit too high on the power level front. King gear is just a bit too strong for the game. Although I think it's kind of okay against the Parasite Queen. She can hold against it reasonably. But like on the whole though, it just dominates the end game. And that does... It removes a little bit of my enjoyment from the King. I don't feel as motivated to get the stuff because once you got it, kind of the game's over in many ways, and that's unless you choose to like sandbag things, which it's not great. This, on the other hand, like this armor set, the Alpha armor, really interesting, really unique, a lot of fun to play with. It's movement based, which is one of the best parts of Kingdom Death, is when they take advantage of the amount of movement, amount of space on the board, and how much you can move around and how important positioning can be. And Screaming God is absolutely about good movement and positioning, which I think is fantastic. I really like it. We'll get into the Showdown board itself at some point later. But suffice to say now, the design of the Showdown, I'm not going to bury the lead, this is way better than the King for me. This is... The Parasite Queen is the best of the finale monsters. My least favourite's the God Hand, who just... If it wasn't... Sometimes he gets really locked into just doing certain things and feels very predictable, whereas the Parasite Queen, no, like, wonderfully terrifying and dangerous in a very unique way, and again really movement orientated, taking advantage of that big board. Fantastic. So not burying the lead, highly recommend this. You get a lot of stuff in here, even though you don't get everything that I think should have been included in here, but we'll get into the specifics as we go through everything. So beyond here, spoilers. I'm not going to go through everything in complete detail. I'm not going to spoil anything more about the Parasite Queen at all. I value that immensely. You'll have to find out why she has a resource deck, what this innovation is, what this pillar card is as you play. I'm just going to say it's great, and I like the Parasite Queen's, the way she's laced into the entire story. That is all very fantastic and interesting. The only real negative about the Parasite Queen is actually these illuminated figures. So we're in spoiler territory. This is the one thing I am going to spoil, because I do need to talk about this, because it is a point of critique. It is a place where the box lacks, which is rare. There's not many places where the box is lacking. This is one of those. So the Illuminated figures have been around for a while. They're associated with the Parasite Queen. These two models came out in resin a long time ago. These two have been added to it. They are actually, when you drill into it, they're the same sculpt posed differently with a few variations and whatever. Considering how different these two are, I did notice that they are basically the same body structure, but that's not a problem. No, the problem is that these Illuminated figures, when I first learned they're going to be included, I assumed that they were going to be included in a way that they were a constant sort of thing involving the settlement and causing issues for it in some kind of form. I thought maybe that would be like an encounter system, the same as the Bone Eaters, which would be great because we need more encounters. Or maybe they'd be like the Forge Priest, where the Forge Priest has a terrain card that makes him turn up as an occasional kind of thing. I thought maybe we'd have X number of Illuminated figures turning up sometimes, the way that Spiderlings can pop up in other Showdowns. Unfortunately, that's not the case. They're minions for the Parasite Queen. I won't get into how they're deployed, but I will say that only one card deploys them. You may not see that during a Showdown. I've only seen it once in the 5 campaigns I've run now against the Parasite Queen and got all the way to the finale once, and that's because I deliberately tried, like sandbagged a bit to see if I could get the cards to turn up, which it did, and it was fine. But you get 4 of these models. You might use 1, maybe 2 in a showdown, and not even guarantee that. So it's a real shame because these models feel like the opportunity's been squandered. Maybe that'll change it in the future. Honestly, if Team Death gives us an encounter that we can buy to include these throughout the campaign, in the way that the Parasite Queen has a story event that recurs through the campaign to link her into things a bit more, if they were also baked more into the campaign experience via an encounter or maybe some terrain cards, I'd be a lot happier, because I think it is a genuine shame. These are 4 very nice models and they're just not involved. No point, you might as well not paint them, really, unless you're going to use them as like starting survivors occasionally, because they're just hardly ever on the board at all. So that's Parasite Queen. That's it. Let's go through all of the... I will say she's still really good. It's just noticeable that when something is that good, you notice the last like couple of percentage where it could have been just perfect. And the illuminated figures are the part of the Parasite Queen that I think just stop it from scoring absolute flawless top marks. Right, so Screaming God, we will do a setup a bit later, but for now I just want to go through all the bits and pieces. I am going to be flipping up some of these cards, but I'm not going to be rummaging through the decks in full and everything. So let's start first of all with the rule book, which goes through all the various details of how we introduce our Screaming God, which is very interesting because the introduction of the Screaming God starts in Lantern Year 3, as you can see. And we're through an event called The Outcast, which is very cool. I'm not going to spoil all of it here, but what it does lead to eventually is an early... let's just get past all this, all the rules and everything, to this. So, Chasing Oblivion. This is the vignette, which has these 4 characters, and it happens in campaign. In Lantern Year 7, if I remember correctly, and it gives you an opportunity to effectively get a taster of what the Screaming God campaign is going to be like, what it's going to be like fighting it in this campaign, nice and early to give you some time to prepare. And I actually think this is such a good idea, because suddenly you're not getting the full picture of everything, but the game isn't trying to surprise you with all of this. It says, hey, here you go. Here's an option for you. You don't have to play this vignette if you don't, but you can, and you can play through the stories of these 4 survivors fighting, not part of your settlement. They're from another settlement and they're fighting a Screaming God, and also it gives us a vignette that we can showcase to demonstrate this to other people. And I think that is incredibly good. It is phenomenal. It lets you prepare a little bit for your first fight ever. It gives us something you can just, if people go like, what's Kingdom Death like? You can go, well, let me just show you what it can be. And this is a great vignette. One of the best. I still like the Killenium Butcher one more, but for this, for the extra purposes this has, it's fantastic. Now, the only negative, the only one, is this is another place where the box being so full falls a little short. These characters don't have miniatures in the box. There is a Survivors of Death vignette that I think I've seen at Gen Con that's coming, but it is a shame that they need to be an extra purchase, and I do hope that box comes with a lot of other stuff to make up for it, because there's another critique point we're going to get to a bit further down the line. But like this, we would have been better off if these illuminated figures hadn't been put in the box and we got these vignette figures instead. That is how much more useful they would have been than these illuminated figures, and I don't feel good saying that, I don't feel happy about it. This will be the Showdown I set up to highlight and demonstrate the Screaming God Showdown, when we just do a brief sort of overview of it. But yeah, this is my criticisms aside on this. It's great. It's well balanced. It's fun. It's a good way to learn. I think it's a phenomenal addition to the box, and I'm really happy about that. Right, so on to the other things. We'll talk about these with the Showdown overview. New armor sets. We get a new armor set card as always. We just get one card. They've changed the layout for this because this alpha set armor is artwork's a bit big. It is very movement based, as you can see. Got a very cool ability. Another monster movement ability that just seems to be the gimmick for most of these sets, is that they copy how a monster behaves specifically with a movement. Very rarely do they not do that, which is fine. This one's unique and different to the rest, so it's pretty cool. We have a hunt event, so I'm just going to say the hunt is pretty harsh. Kind of like, think like Dragon King. Dragon King would be quite a beating, or the Phoenix, quite a beating. It's up there. The AI deck, not going to spoil the cards in there, but it's great. It's really fun. Hit location deck, the same, really fun. Very reflex, a lot of reflexes, so you'll be thinking about that. Resource deck, there's a fantastic resource mechanic in this, where basically when you do win, you only have a finite amount of time to gather resources. You're constantly pushing your luck, almost like playing a form of blackjack. We'll get more into what the Showdown, the nature of the Showdown and everything is when I do that bit. So onto the Indomitable. There's one Indomitable in the box. This is not good. This is the final major point of critique I have. It's really not acceptable for us to just get one Indomitable resource. I think anything less than 3 Indomitable resources in any of these boxes is just not okay. I assume we're going to see a few more in the Survivors of Death box. I'm not happy about that, but I'll be even less happy if we don't. It's perfectly fine, powerful piece of gear. I think it's great. But this is... We don't want like 6 or 7 Indomitable resources. We don't want 1. We want somewhere between 3 and 5 most of the time, and this doesn't feel good to just get 1. Not good at all. We have our customary collective cognition card. Once we get here, it will give us a monster-specific knowledge. It's great. It's a great knowledge. And then a strange resource, as to be expected from beating the highest level. We also have new settlement events. New scout stuff, so new scout discovery, a new tablet. Just here we have a new meal card, and some rare gear. New disorders, they're fun. New secret fighting art, very fun. New fighting arts, which really you can't use if you're playing with Ark Survivors, which is a shame, because I am gonna this one parkour is so unique and so fun, and really feels like it was designed with the Screaming God Showdown in mind. It's a shame that it's so hard to get fighting arts if you're playing with Ark Survivors, but that's one of the costs of what's happened from this split. Along with Team Death have had to spend their time designing fighting arts and knowledges and covering both Ark and non-Ark survivors. It adds up. This should be over here. It should be here. We have a new innovation which comes from Sculpture and has its own unique story event that I'm not going to spoil here, but I think is really cool. Very well done. And then here we have our little deck of Vignette survivors. Harmony, Sage, Lyra and Melody. And specific, we got Count Armor and Singing Armor extra cards. We'll greatly appreciate when the bits, the cards you need, the armor cards you need to put into the box. That's always great. Really happy with that. So, just get on to a little bit of the Showdown. I've just laid out the board here. I'm going to talk through this before I do a setup, because first time doing a setup might break a few things. Mostly because of me messing around with anchors or stuff like that. We'll find out. I'm gonna do that off camera and then get it set up. But Essentially, we have these two new boards. So this does lengthen the size of your board, meaning it takes up more real estate. And there's a couple of like extra wrinkles. We've got the Horizon board on this side, which has the Horizon deck, where you will draw a card when instructed to do so by the Screaming God's AI. We'll just look at that when we get there. And it sets them up, and there's a flow step where survivors have an opportunity to dash around. And then they all move onto the board, and they move forward 7 each time. It is a lot easier to do on the printed board because we can see exactly where the numbers are. So number 7 and then number 14, we know. If you're playing with the plastic Showdown board, you don't have those numbers, so you either have to count each time, memorize the positions, or put a little marker on the sides of the board for the 3 spaces, which is 7, 14, and then 21. These basically thunder across. This is a rolling road scenario. So rolling road, originally, I think the very first game that did it was the original Thunder Road, which is, I believe, where the term rolling road was actually used. It's a game I used to play at my grandparents' back in the 2000s. They had a copy of it, along with some other games mostly from my older cousins. Stuff from the like 80s and 90s, like Hero Quest and Thunder Road was one of them. I know Thunder Road has a reprint, but it doesn't seem to have the rolling road of the original. There's also Necromunda Ash Wastes, took that idea further and has rolling road scenarios where basically you move the terrain in a direction while keeping the vehicles in the same place to kind of represent that, and we're doing a similar thing here. So this isn't a new idea, but it is a new idea to Kingdom Death and to boss battlers, and it's really well executed, and it's a lot of fun. So they're thundering across, and over here we've got the Stampede, which is effectively a death wall. It stays in this place. It actually covers the last line on the of squares, so this board is, instead of 22, it's 21 columns, which is, you know, a small difference, but it does, you do feel it. And this is one of the showdowns that really takes advantage of the board, with these tiles slamming down and the Screaming God moving around the place with it like at extreme speed, and the survivors having to run and move and position to keep up, trying to avoid getting hit by the blocks, but also if you can hide between them, you've got a little space where the Screaming God might not be able to get you with an attack. So there's so much to think about in this showdown. Now I'm going to take the risk, and we're going to try and set this up for the vignette. So setup, showdown, vignette, and I am going to click this and pause the recording, and we'll see where we are after. Okay, here we go. Right, so here we are. It's all set up now. I had a little bit of trouble with populating the gear grids. I couldn't get them to automatically fill, although all the relevant cards were assigned to the templates. But it's sorted now, just took a little bit extra time. So we got Sage, wearing Lantern armor with a Meteor Ungus, one of the new weapons. Harmony, wearing Singer armor with a Saxy. Melody, wearing Count armor with a Gorn and Vandal Sledge, new weapon. And Lyra here with White Lion armor, which is always a little surprising. And a Zanbato, Vespian Cello. As I said, we don't have specific miniatures for them. It default assigned names to some of these, which are clipping a little bit through the board. That's probably because of me repositioning things, not the simulator. And so let's just briefly walk through how it goes. I'm going to show you the movement of the labyrinth tiles and everything. So as I said, this is a rolling road scenario. It's taking place on an infinite track, a loop, a Mobius strip type loop, where the Screaming God and its herd are running endlessly round and round and round. As a consequence, the concept is this showdown board is constantly moving, and they're actually moving like this, which is demonstrated by these static elements moving while the survivors and the Screaming God stay in place unless they collide with anything along the way. So that is covered with this Endless Horizon trait. So we'll draw a new Horizon card, at the start of each round. And additionally, the monster can't be knocked back or knocked down under any circumstances, which avoids any sticky rules situations while also keeping things in favour of the Screaming God on that front. It'd be kind of crazy if it fought in this environment and had a disadvantage. Withering Blast is a trait that it uses. It's a big old explosion. You can see that one of the interesting things, just like a projectile beam attack, is you can hide behind terrain if it's monster impassable, as you can see. Generally, the only terrain that lasts very long in this is monster impassable, because the non-monster impassable stuff, which might have been either generated by critical wounds, making bits of the Screaming God fall off, or by, say, Facism, which provides extra terrain, is going to slide off the back end of the board very quickly. Worth noting that this is not where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be there. Which I'll show you. As you can see in the setup here, Horizon board, sorry, Stampede board starts on the back end there, Horizon board sits off. Anyway, that's fixed. Okay, got rules for the Stampede. If you hit it, you die. Arcane a terrain goes in there, it's been archived. The Screaming God doesn't ever step in there for obvious reasons. And we got a final trait that covers its undermaw. So essentially what happens at the start of each round, we'll draw a Horizon card, and then these will move forward. Let me just get here. 7 spaces. Now in between this, the Screaming God leaps up in the air. It goes off the board, which you can see here on these cards. It's essentially so that the monster impassable terrain never collides with the Screaming God. It basically hops over it. So that will look like, so say nothing changed. On this particular turn we have these coming in. So it's a minor tetrad. This builds like a music box, or if you want a more modern reference, a Guitar Hero / Rock Band style riff. Don't know what the proper order for them is, but if you put them in a certain order you might be able to put together a tune, because these could be notches on a music box that you can crank. Yeah, so what will happen here is, say they've deployed and nobody does anything at all, doesn't move. They went to space 14, so the Screaming God would jump in the air. So I'm going to leave it on the board, but you'd take it off the board, and these would effectively slide underneath it, like so. And then you put these ones on, like that. And you can see how it gradually builds up this moving maze of like hurdles, but obstacles. Really, you have to go around the hurdles if you have parkour, but otherwise they're obstacles. And again, if say like for whatever reason these didn't move, they didn't do anything at all, then the Screaming God once again would jump. So as we just grab our tile, we put these in place. Come on, you know where you go. You go here, you go here, and you go. Oh, I don't need those dice, thank you. Here, let's double check that. Yeah, boom, 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 boom. Okay. So let's say the dumbest thing happened, and none of these lot moved. Then we would move this first lot forward to here, 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 and here, and we know that these all suffer collisions and would throw them backwards. And there's rules for that, but essentially they would all die because they've been thrown into the Stampede by this, because they've been silly, they've been very daft. Right, there we are. So that's how this will keep working. At this point now, that lot would fall off, and then this new set would come on with the next Horizon card, and that's effectively how this works, with these moving from left to right, these constantly moving obstacles that you're running around. So one of the neat things is, like, if the Screaming God targets you and you're standing like this, it can't get you, and that would actually like cancel attack, which is pretty big, because the Screaming God has like it can go wherever it likes, more or less, except where it can't fit between monster impassable. So that's a neat thing, but you're constantly like dashing through and dodging around and running like this, and good movement, dashing and everything is really important in the Showdown. It's also like this top section's quite risky because you don't know what the next Horizon card's going to be, and while you might be able to dash a bit, if you're really foolish, you could end up in a position where you're just guaranteed to get smashed into, and that might knock you backwards into even the Screaming God, which is pretty bad because it just gobbles up the first thing that collides with it. So that's the main gist of this, and this is the Vignette Survivors, so this is the best way I can show you without spoiling too much. I'm not going to go through its moves or hit location deck or AI deck, that's for a Dark Bestiary in the distant future, but yeah, for the most part that's what I wanted to show and showcase and kind of run through how it works. It is probably the best Showdown they've ever designed. It is the first one that takes full advantage of how big and empty the board is, and it constantly asks players to think about their positioning, not just at the start of their turn and how they're going to move, but also where they're going to end, and you got to think about what ifs in respect to what terrain turns up in the future. It is so incredibly well done, and it is an absolute delight. The Parasite Queen has her own version of like requiring a lot of movement and good positioning, which I'm not going to get into here, as I said I wouldn't, but it's also fantastic. So yeah, that's my overview and review of the Screaming God. It is, in my opinion, a essential purchase. Whereabouts, I think, depends on how much you've got already, because it turns up late, Lantern Year 17 if I remember correctly, and so earlier than the King, but because it turns up late, you need to be consistently getting there in order to properly experience this. You know, you can play the Vignette a bunch of times, it's very replayable, all Vignettes are, but mostly you need to be at least reaching the Watcher a reasonable amount of time, and if you're struggling to get past the Watcher, this gear can help, because Quarry Node 4 gear is very strong, even if it's quite sort of reasonable. If you've paused the video when I was hovering over some of the gear grids for the Vignette Survivors, you'd have seen some of the stats on just the weapons. There's a couple of weapons there, and they're very impressive, and they're quite fairly balanced as well. So I still think like the most essential purchases is a additional Quarry Node 1 and Quarry Node 2 monster, or 2 additional Quarry Node 1s, a Quarry Node 3, and then a Nemesis 2 and a Nemesis 3, the Black Knight. But after that lot, I think you might even consider getting this before the Gambler's Chest, because it gives you a big old challenge. It could work with Parasite Queen as like a send-off for your fighting arts campaign. You might not go back to fighting arts after you try Ark Survivors, and because it does work. Like, I played a campaign without Ark Survivors, and it was fun. It was very enjoyable. I really love parkour. It's part of the reason I pointed at it in this review. It's just kind of sad that it's not easy to get with Ark Survivors, because it's incredibly fun. Like, parkour, as everyone goes. This is really good. It's a no-brainer on the simulator, and in physical, while it is considerably more expensive, it is a box full of a lot of great stuff. As I said, the only complaints I have are in respect to the lack of the Vignette Survivors, the lack of the Illuminated figures doing very much of anything at all. There's such a tiny part of this, and the pattern situation, more indomitable patterns, and I didn't mention it, but there's no seed patterns as well, which is another shame. I expected 2 seed patterns, 3 indomitable resource patterns, and if these vignettes, so if these Illuminated figures are going to be present in a small fraction of Parasite Queen Showdowns, which is looking like that's how they are, I just wish they hadn't bothered with them and given us the Vignette Survivors in the box. So my hopes for the future, I know we've got the Vignette Survivors coming, but I hope that we get something for the Illuminated figures, because as it stands right now, you may as well just have some unarmoured survivors ready, rather than bothering with these models, as nice as they are, because you just don't see them. So that aside, fantastic. Can't give it 10 out of 10, but I can easily give it a 9.5 out of 10. It's nearly perfect. Just tiny bit more work and it would have been absolutely perfect. It is still one of the best, if not the best, expansions that have been released to date. And my 3 criticisms don't take away from that. So, that's it. Recommended. Great fun for all the family. Happy hunting.